One team has flown under the radar with the driver market in a frenzy between Alpine and McLaren, and that's Aston Martin. While they may have lost their star driver Sebastian Vettel, they have big plans for the future. So what has the team's new technical director promised for the year, and did Fernando Alonso just make the best decision of his career? Stay tuned for all of that and more coming right up. First, how will Aston Martin handle Alonso? Aston Martin has big plans for the future, and a key part of them will be the two-time world champion Fernando Alonso. He might be 40 years old, but he sure gave the youngsters on the grid a tough time on the track this year, and during negotiations with Alpine earlier this year, he shocked the paddock by jumping ship to Aston Martin. Ambassadors for Aston Martin, Pedro de la Rosa, has already laid out some ground rules for Alonso, as he is notorious for being a difficult team member. But de la Rosa says that Alonso isn't as difficult as his reputation suggests. Instead, it's a case of loss in translation. He said, "The fact that English is not his native tongue sometimes makes him a bit harsh when he tries to describe things, but he's very honest. If you are as competitive as him, you won't have any problems with Fernando." De la Rosa thinks that communication is key to Aston Martin moving forward and that they are prepared to handle Alonso. The benefit of signing a two-time world champion is his level of performance and experience. Aston Martin has made a big statement by taking Alonso from Alpine, which Otmar Schaffnauer claims was mainly motivated by money. But with a big contract, as the more successful driver in the team, his partner Lance Stroll will be under pressure like never before. Next, got off on the wrong foot. Lance Stroll will have work to do if he wants to repair relations after their high-speed incident at the United States Grand Prix. The two collided after a safety car restart when Alonso tried to pull a move on Stroll, with the Canadian moving to block him off and sending Alonso flying into the air. For his role in the crash, Stroll was given a 30-second time penalty and a 3-place grid penalty for the next race, but some thought it wasn't nearly enough. Former world champion Jacques Villeneuve even called for Stroll to be handed a race ban for his dangerous driving. Meanwhile, Alonso was shaken after the race, saying he could still feel the fear in his stomach, but Stroll wasn't going to take it lying down. While he admitted that he moved late, he denied that there was anything malicious about it. Stroll chalked it up to a difference in speed and judgment, and that he gave Alonso plenty of room on the track. The crash was one of the biggest this season and sent shockwaves around the paddock. Inside the Aston Martin garage, there will be a lot of work to ensure that future teammates are on good terms. Their relationship will be complicated because Stroll's father, Lawrence, is the owner of the Aston Martin team, which has helped secure him a seat in F1. Pedro de la Rosa has tipped Stroll as an underrated driver whose full potential we are yet to see. How did Aston Martin breach? The pressure from the cost cap breach has been on 2021 champions Red Bull, but the FIA's findings pointed the finger at another constructor too, Aston Martin. Unlike Red Bull, Aston Martin didn't breach the cost cap, but instead made procedural errors. Earlier in the year, Williams was already fined $25,000 for the late submission of documents, and Aston Martin team boss has confirmed that they have negotiated a fair penalty for their mistakes. Aston Martin will be happy to put the issue behind them, with their reputations taking a hit from the negative headlines. And that reputation hasn't exactly been squeaky clean in the past either. When the team was still known as Racing Point, they were penalized by the FIA for significantly copying a Silver Arrows car for what was dubbed the Pink Mercedes. If that wasn't enough, their model has been described as the Green Red Bull for more similarities this year. But this time, their infringement is a little different. They aren't accused of any performance-related breaches. Reports have suggested that the error is related to a tax problem in the United Kingdom, which Aston Martin may have misunderstood. That's a lesson for everyone. Even Formula One teams can't escape tax. Up next, why does Dan Fallows have big hopes for the Aston Martin moving forward? And what has been the key to the team's late success this season? So don't go anywhere. Dan Fallows reveals next year's plan. Formula One teams are all about talent. Whether developing each year's car or driving it to the finish line, each part of the process relies on having the best people. That's why Aston Martin snatched up Dan Fallows, previously the head of aerodynamics at Red Bull. The news was announced last year, but it took months for the two teams to decide whether he could leave. Fallows had a contract until 2023, and Red Bull had no intention of letting him go early. But it seems that Aston Martin had a better offer for him. The two teams announced that they had finally settled at the start of this year. With that out of the way, Fallows was free to get to work on Aston Martin's car, and there have been a lot of problems. Billionaire Lawrence Stroll purchased the team, and he may have bought a sinking ship, with the constructor 7th in the championship. But Fallows has said he is actually incredibly ambitious about reaching the front of the grid in the future. According to Fallows, next year's model is a huge step forward compared to this year's car. He revealed that Aston Martin has hundreds of projects right now. At the same time, though, Fallows said they need to be realistic about the fact that progress would likely take years, not months. Next, how has Aston Martin jumped in performance? The last part of the season has been promising for Aston Martin. Starting in Singapore, their drivers finished in P6 and P8, backing up the next round with a P6 in Japan. And the team's performance director, Tom McCulloch, has recently revealed the difference. After a rocky start to the season, Aston Martin only began to score points in the 4th round of the season. Unfortunately, their form has been anything but consistent, hovering around P10 at the best of times. That's why the results in Singapore, Japan, and a P7 at the US Grand Prix are so impressive. So what does it boil down to? McAuliffe said that the jump in performance is from a continuous aggressive development plan. Finally, their car is coming together with just a few races to go, but they are still neck and neck with Alfa Romeo in the Constructors' Championship and have their sights on next year. Next year's technical regulations will remain largely the same as this year, meaning that improvements made during the end of this season will carry over into a head start for the next campaign. And one of the best signs from McAuliffe is the team's reliability this season. He said, "We've had impeccable reliability. The drivers did an excellent job. We've squeezed the most out of it, so it's very satisfying." All of this will be music to Alonso's ears. While Aston Martin has a long way to go if they want to catch up to Alpine, they are definitely on the right track. Next, a bitter goodbye. Fernando Alonso may have an exciting future at Aston Martin, but he's replacing a retiring legend of the sport. 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel has had a difficult time at the outfit, currently sitting in 11th place in the championship. And it may have been a case of bad timing for the former Red Bull and Ferrari superstar. After a season and a half of struggle, Vettel finally called it quits on his career by announcing his retirement. Former rival Lewis Hamilton said he hopes to see the German return to the sport one day, but Vettel hasn't suggested that he plans to. When asked about the improvements that Aston Martin has been making, Vettel felt that it was a little bittersweet. He said, "Of course, we would have liked to have been a bit faster in the 2 years, but it's slowly getting better." Vettel didn't have the patience or commitment to wait for a long-term development plan. After moving to Ferrari to fulfill his childhood dream, Vettel was denied a 5th world title through Ferrari's mismanagement, his errors, and a dominant Mercedes team. And as a fan favorite, many are sad to see Vettel retire at such a low point in his career. But there's no doubt he left his mark on the sport and won't be forgotten anytime soon. Do you think that Vettel was unlucky at Aston Martin? And are they on the right track for next year? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again at the next one.